Hello, SAINTCON. Who is tired? I could take a nap. Yeah. Okay. So, in case you're in the wrong place, this talk is about 10 things, more like 23 things, that you might not know. If this is not what you're expecting, you're welcome to leave. If it is, then just sit back and close your eyes. I'll try to talk slowly and deeply and see if I can sedate you down into a nice, dreamless sleep. All right, I am Sean Jackson. I dropped my mic. I am the Director of Trust at SPIF Incorporated. Trust is the marriage of security and privacy. I'm the acting CISO and the acting CPO, and so I said, call it trust. On the interwebs, on the various social platforms, I'm Tarkus. It's my handle. If you ever see me playing contests, I'm going to be Tarkus. I'm a husband, a father, a fur dad. I am neurodivergent. I am on the spectrum, and I have ADHD. I support minorities in tech. I love LGBTQ people. I feel around this community, specifically Utah County and Utah, they don't get a lot of love, so I try to give them love. And all my hugs are free, but you have to ask for them. I do not just give hugs out. You have to ask me for a hug, and I'll give you a hug. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? This is the list of things we're going to talk about. We'll get there. Who's this talk for? If you do not have a SIM, this is the stuff you need to start watching. And this is how you build a SIM. You may have heard of organizations where you've heard someone, back in the day, they programmed our SIM. Well, what we're going to talk about today is the steps to build a SIM. If you have a SIM, this is going to be a list of things you want to make sure your SIM is alerting on, and this is where you get started in threat hunting. I got to tell you, last year, Grifter gave a talk on threat hunting, and I swear it was a SANS course inside of 1 hour. Go look on YouTube's and find Grifter's talk on threat hunting from last year, and you will not get more content, better disseminated than what Grifter did. He is brilliant. But essentially, if you need to see all the things and they are all over the place, this is the talk. What do I need to see all the things? You need a log aggregate server. This is a server that's going to be able to catch all the logs from everywhere. You want a lot of storage because logs take up space. Those are text files that take up a lot of space. You don't need a lot of RAM or CPU because you're not doing huge computations. You're just collecting stuff and then you're processing it or you're reading through it. Now, graduate level bonus points, if you can have an automated system that will copy all the logs from that server to another server, let's say for 6 months, your customers will want to know what's happening with your log backups. So automate your log backups. So everything we're going to talk about is going to forward all its logs to this server. So this server is going to be just a behemoth of text files, of logs, of all different kinds. So you need to get your data ninja skills up. Now, what am I talking about? Data ninja skills. Cat, cut, awk, sed, and grep. You need to get really good at these because your log files are going to be big, long strings that have lots of different kinds of data, timestamps, IP addresses, ports, executions, programs, all kinds of data. And to get value out of that, you have to be able to say, out of all of this kind of log, show me all of this section, or show me anything that doesn't fit in these parameters from those logs over this time period. So you're going to be grepping and cutting and a lot of less, a lot of cat. So these are your data ninja skills. You're going to use regex to fine-tune stuff, and regex it's a very, like a friend who mumbles. You don't want to hang out with him, but he's still a friend. You want Python, that's what I recommend for scripting, log parsing. Python is a very low entrance bar into scripting. You want to automate this. You want things to just work on their own. And you want to establish as soon as you can, and this is a perpetual thing you're doing, you're establishing what your baselines are. What is normal? And any tool you have out there that is a next-gen firewall or a user behavior analytics tool, or even CrowdStrike. When you install CrowdStrike on a new host, it will run that host through some work. It puts it under strain, it puts it under stress, and it wants to see what the baseline is. If it's behaving at a high usage, what does it do? If it is running 30 programs within half a second, what does it do? It's getting a baseline so that if something happens that's outside that baseline, it knows what is wrong. So when you're collecting oodles and oodles of logs, you need to establish what the baselines are. What is normal for your environment? The only way to do that is to have huge sample sets. So you start collecting the logs, and then you start looking at it and say, what's the high, what's the low, what's the mean, what's the average? First things, probably the most important things you want to be watching closely, identity and access events. Access levels and identities of those who are logging into things. Servers, firewalls, workstations, who is logging in? That's the first step if you want to see if someone is doing something wrong. If it's an employee who is logging in from Sandy, Utah, and Pakistan, that's not normal. You want to know how frequently they log in. How often does the admin log in between the hours of 8 and 10 in the morning, log out between 4 and 6, and then log in again at between 8 and 10 at night, and log out between 11 and 12. I'm just throwing out numbers, but if your admin logs in all the time on those periods, you want to know when he logs in at 3 in the morning. Location of logins. If your systems admin is always logging in from Sandy, like I said, and then suddenly she logs in from Pakistan, send her a Slack and say, hey, are you in Pakistan? And she says, no. And you say, well, it looks like you are. Let's look at your passwords. And then odd times of logins. Like I said, if someone's logging in all the time between 8 and 10 and 4 and 5, and that's it, and then they do 3 in the morning, if they do 3 in the morning 2 days in a row, something is wrong. And then everything I've said so far, you want to know this for all your employees. You want to know everyone, because everyone is a point of failure, potentially. But your admins, if they have the keys to the kingdom, you really want to pay a lot of attention to them. So everything about the frequency of logins, location of logins, and odd times of logins, pay extra close attention to that for all your admins. If they have administrative access to anything, watch them closely. If that feels like a whole lot, make sure you have as few admins as possible. Don't have a lot of admins. No one should have a lot of admin access. So how could you find the baselines for these? I kind of been saying it. Go ahead. A lot of log, sed, ack, and cat. Yes. Huge data sets, and then find the averages. Endpoint alerts. So this is going to be your EDRs and your EPPs and your XDRs. They generate logs. When you have CrowdStrike sitting on a an endpoint. Yes, there's a dashboard for CrowdStrike, but we're talking about aggregating everything together to make a SIM. You can forward all those endpoint alerts to your aggregate server. You'll have to spend time looking what the log looks like and how to parse data out of it. And then if you're talking about SOAR, one of the things that I look for in SOAR is the ability when CrowdStrike says, I found something, I say, show me all the IPs that machine has seen. So you'd have to be able to figure out this machine, what IPs has it gone to. We'll talk about NetStat later on. And what are the whois's for those IP addresses? And what IP addresses have reached to it? And what are the whois's for those? Now, like I said, you have dashboards for these tools, but you want to collect everything in one place so you're not hunting and pecking all over the place. And you also might be able to get the tool to ping you. So I know CrowdStrike can work with things that will send text messages or Slack messages, and so these tools can ping you and say, hey, I saw something, then you go back and check your logs. You want to look at abnormal ingress and egress ports. So what are some of normal ports? And I'll give you some. There's SSH, port 22, Nmap 445, HTML 80, SSL 443, SMTP 25, DNS 53. Have you heard of anyone exfiltrating data over DNS? A couple hands. That's hard to find. It's hard to pick up on, which is why they do it. The way I've seen it, they will append little bits of data and reach out for an IP address and do that over and over and keep just truncating their data onto these requests. And if you control the DNS server, you can then take all those logs put together and you have the data. But if something is talking on, if it looks like you have DNS going over 8080, that's not normal. So where can you get this information? Where can you find out what ports are being talked over? Anyone? NetStat. Get your NetStat logs from a host and you can see what is talking to it and what it is talking to. This is what NetStat looks like. It's not super pretty, it's not super forthcoming, but in the middle, let's see, in the middle we have some addresses. I have 24, 143, 204, 224, port 80, and 192, 168, 106 on port 2848. That's right there in the middle. You can see the 192, 108, 106, the first line in the center. After the colon is the port. So that's how you can find the port. Cut, delimiter, colon, port. So how could you search for uncommon ports? How could you find the exceptions to the normal? You would do a cat, cut, delimiter, colon, write to a file for each line in that file. If it's not in first 1,000 ports, you can search for common ports. If it's not in this, then write it to another file, go back and find the outliers, search for those, see what the connection was. That make sense? This is something you want to script. If you see anything, so you want to run all your NetStat logs. If there's anything that's not in the first 1,000 common ports, make that a new file. Now go back and search for those entries, find the IP addresses that were going to those different ports, and start searching. Could you do an IP lookup to find where the connection is? Could you search for whois to find information if there is any? And could you automate that whole process with a script? Does anyone think they could automate that with a script? You can. You can automate that whole process of look through all the NetStat logs for the last 24 hours, run it against the common ports, show me the outliers, go back, identify the rows that have those outliers, and run a whois on all those IP addresses. Show me what you find. You could do that. You want to know about abnormal log volume. Again, you need a baseline of what that is. You want to say, normal is this type of log, and this number of logs in this time. Identify the peak, identify the low, and identify the mean, the average. Speaking of mean, what might it mean if there's a spike? If you have, let's say, your netstat logs, what happens if you suddenly one machine is generating 5 times the netstat traffic? You might want to know that because it's different. For some reason, the machine is now doing 5 times more traffic than it ever has before. 5 times the connections. What's that about? What could be going on that machine? What does it mean if there's a flat line? What if a log stops? Or what if a log doesn't produce, it normally produces 2,000 logs in an hour, and now it produces 5. You might have a server down. You might have something not working that should be working. File integrity monitoring. How do file integrity tools work? Does anyone know? How do tools know if a file has been changed? Someone said metadata, hashes, they hash them. Anyone know what a hash is? Or anyone not know what a hash is? Okay, so it's a mathematical equation where you can input a file into this equation and it will come out with a string. And if you don't change it, it will always come out with that very same string. You add a space or a period and the string will change. So if you're going to lock down, you say these are the corporate secret data, this is customer data, these things should never change. So you want to do some file integrity monitoring. You could script that. I'm repeating myself, I hate that. So you want to identify what and where the files are. You want to make sure they're never changed. And you could script that. You could say, go to this folder, run MD5 against everything in here, go do it again. Did anything change? Do it again next week. Did anything change? Do it every day. And if anything changes, then let me know. If it doesn't change, business as usual. But you can't know if it's business as usual until you have your file integrity script watching everything it needs to watch. Once you know it's watching, let it run. And if something comes and sends you an email, hey, something changed, get into it. Vulnerability scan findings. Now, there's no rocket surgery here. This is your vulnerability scanners. I use Tenable. They don't pay me, but it's my favorite, although I feel like it's getting behind the times nowadays. But you can have your reports that send out XML, and then you just parse through the XML. You want to have alerts on criticals, highs and mediums and lows, disregard informational. You want to know VPN logins, more access and identity. Again, who is logging in? When are they logging in? Where are they logging in from? Did they get the password right the first time? Did they get it right the 300th time? You don't want someone using VPN and trying the password 300 times and never contacting IT. That's not a good employee. That's someone who is an imposter. Physical access notifications. Now this is an iffy, this is something you might not have access to, but your doors, your scanners, you want to know, did a deactivated card try to get in? You don't need to know when everyone logs in and when they don't, or when they badge in, unless you have a system like Snow was talking about in the keynote, a badge where you have to badge out before you leave. I worked at one organization that had this. You couldn't leave, like the doors wouldn't open if it wasn't an emergency without badging out. It's kind of cool. It was an insurance company, and they were old and they had good security. You want to know if a door is propped open. If someone is moving something in, if they're loading up the break room, great. When does that happen? So you could say, if this door is propped open at this time by this badge, so this badge is used, the door is propped open, it's open for half an hour, you know it's the office crew stocking the mailroom, they're coming back from Costco. If that's not the case, if it's another badge, let me know. And then you go talk to your operations team and say, no one can prop this door open except this badge, this one badge. I won't alert on this badge. You use our badge, and I'm going to come talk to you. And then, if you can, has an entering card not exited yet. If I were to do this in my organization, I'd have to pay to have badge readers put on the inside of doors, and that's something that we're not going to do right now, so I don't have that possibility. If I ever do, I will say you need to badge in and badge out. And then you can get a report at the end of the day who didn't badge out. If there's someone who consistently does that, have a talk with them. If someone just does that once in a while, go see if they've fallen asleep under their desk. And for the socially comfortable, do the cards scanned match the people in the office? Did someone badge in and they're not in the office? And there's a visitor in the break room that you don't know? You'd want to know if that person has the wrong badge or has an employee's badge. Now, of all these things, which of these could you script checks for? If you had this data, is there anything you could not script a check for? All the stuff we're talking about going to this aggregate server, you could script all of it. You could script all of it to find the outliers, and that's your SIM. I want to talk about RITA. This is Real Intelligence Threat Analytics. Has anyone ever heard of RITA? This is one of my favorite tools for open source stuff. This is so powerful. This was built by John Strand and Black Hills Information Security. He named her for his mother, Rita Strand. She died in 2016. This identifies C2 traffic. Now, RITA, you're going to have to get a feed off of your switch or your firewall or whatever to grab all the data, all the netstat data, all the traffic. And it's going to make Yara logs, and then it is brilliant at finding the C2 traffic. C2 traffic is when a host is compromised, it's going to ping the mothership. Do you have instructions for me? Do you have instructions for me? Do you have instructions for me? They'll do a 35 kilobyte ping, let's say every 3 hours, so it never trips anything. It's just a quiet little pip, regularly scheduled. RITA is really good at seeing, is there a commonality between these little pings? Machines are doing all kinds of traffic, but there are patterns, and RITA finds the patterns. So RITA will find if there's a machine that could be talking to a command and control server. It's brilliant. It's awesome. And this is open source. It's free. Get it. So I should not have said this was a 1 hour talk. We're coming up on a half hour. There's somewhere between 13 and 24 things, depending on how you cut them up. And if you look at everything as doubled for admins and regular users, your mileage may vary. You may not have as many of the logs as I'm talking about. You might have more. You might have more tools that can give you more insight into functions and behaviors and give more things to analyze. And what are we really doing here? We're building a poor, manual, clunky version of a SIM. You are aggregating all the things that the computers know that you don't into one place, and you're using scripting to parse out intelligent data out of those logs. If you have a SIM, these are the things you want that SIM paying attention to. Tune your rules to these events. If you're threat hunting, this is where you'll find the footprints in the paint of the attackers. You know what I'm talking about? Back in the day when the power would go out in a 7-Eleven, they would throw a can of paint on the floor because they couldn't lock the door and they couldn't leave. But if they were somewhere else, someone could run in and grab something. They could see their footprints in the paint. The logs are the footprints in the paint. Something I didn't say that I should have. You want to make sure that the logs, when they're being written to, are not editable. You want to make sure that no one can write to it, no human can write to it. Only the various systems that are talking to the aggregate server can write to it. No one else can. So there's non-repudiation. You can't say that someone modified it, someone changed it. And so if you do tune your SIM to look at these things, you're getting a pretty good job at threat hunting. You're getting started. Again, go watch Grifter's talk last year, I think from this ballroom. He was brilliant. It was like a SANS course. So the next steps, once you have all this, and this could be a year-long process to build this system. Once you do, now you need to have some pretty reporting so you can show people the data that you're learning. And if you have actionable information or if you have events, you want to say, here's the events we found. Our homemade SIM found these events, and we did this and this and this and this. Or our homemade SIM found we have an incident, and we did this and this and this and this. And you want to have, executives like to have pretty graphs. They like to have pie charts. They like to have pretty slides, and grep and awk don't make pretty slides. So talk to your marketing department, figure out how you can take that data, make it in pretty reporting for your boards. We're at the end, so hit me with your questions, and I'll repeat them for the video. Go ahead. People need a card to get out. Yeah, train them. You say this is how we're going to do it. You can get your phone, make a little video, say, I'm going to badge in, and now on the system, I know that I'm in the building, and if I just leave, I didn't do that, and I could log back in. Or you could say your system won't let you it won't let you badge in again. You have to badge out. To bug the security guy. And I'd say you got to bring a Tootsie Pop, and then I'll reset your badge. Oh, you need to have, how do you interface with people who have safety concerns in an emergency situation? All your doors have to fail open, and you have to, I mean, if everyone's in the building and they all run out and they haven't badged out, someone's going to call you and say, hey, reset the badges. There was a fire. You say, oh, yeah, okay. Everyone's reset. Right. I don't have a system that's tied into the fire alarm. But yeah, something like that. Another question. I see a finger. Go ahead. So everyone at home can hear what happened. He's saying, check with your local fire marshal. check your jurisdiction that you're in. There are rules and requirements around controlled egress, emergency egress. He worked also for an insurance company that had controlled egress, and it was great and perfect, but there was a ton of paperwork, and there are rules to how you let people out, because you have to let them out. Any other questions or comments? It just all makes perfect sense. Everyone's ready to go home and start this project? There is a lot. How you want to manage the data, I will not prescribe. You can figure that out if you put it in a database. But at the basest, most simple, you're aggregating everything and you're running scripts that are doing cuts and greps and cats and writing to new files. It is that it's hacked. You're hacking your way into a SIM. There are more elegant ways to do it. Databases, Looker. I do. Yeah, well, it's not too slow. They're text files. You can munge through text files really quickly. But when you have bigger and bigger text files, if you're saying show me everything over 6 months, that might take some time where it could be faster through a database. So, yeah, that would be maybe a graduate level. You figure out how to pull everything into a database automatically and show me database reports. And you can have better graphs from databases. Any other questions? Then thank you. Enjoy your free 30 or 27 minutes. Thank you.